Welcome to the Millennial Rant, a podcast about whatever's bothering me today. With topics ranging from politics to pop culture, there's a rant to cover everyone. For more Millennial Rant content, you can join me on the web at millennialrant.com. I genuinely do not know if I have told this story before or not, so if I have, then you get to hear it again because it's relevant. So I've talked before on this podcast about how I'm enrolled in a PhD program for narrative communications, and I'm about 2 years in solidly. I'm about to start year 3, and it's been really great. Honestly, it's been an amazing journey. I've very much enjoyed it. There were some ups and downs, but there usually is, even with stuff that you like. But I don't think I've specifically said that this is actually the second PhD program that I have applied for and enrolled in. And the reason why this is the second one is because the first program I enrolled in was really not for me. It worked out great for the other kids in the cohort, but it was just not for me. A little bit of context for my background. I originally started as a creative writer. I got my Master's of Fine Arts in 2015 in creative writing, and then I tried to get a job teaching. I tried to get into a creative writing PhD program. I tried a lot of different things and it just wasn't working out. I realized that I needed more education if I was going to continue in academia, which I wanted to do. And so I decided to go back, but I didn't want to get a master's degree in English because everybody who has a Master's of Fine Arts in creative writing also has a master's in English, and so it wasn't any more diverse. I ended up stumbling across a program in mass communications, and so I enrolled thinking it was for journalism, ended up finding my calling. It was really great, but I didn't have any real background in communications at all. I didn't really know the theories. I didn't really have any confidence in my ability to participate and expand the literature and the science that was being produced. So when the time came for me to decide if I was going to further my education, I had to choose whether or not I was going to go back to creative writing or if I was going to continue on with communications, and I chose the former. So I went back to creative writing thinking I would take all of the things that I learned in communications and translate them over into creative writing. So I enrolled in a PhD program, and this was right during COVID, so it was all online to start with, which was great because I was working full-time for Moms for America and I traveled a ton even then. So I was able to do it online, and I enrolled in 3 classes because that's what was available. And it was there was a place writing seminar, so writing about places, but also writing in places. It was very interesting. I enjoyed that class. I had a workshopping class, sort of. It was like workshopping with the professor, not necessarily workshopping with the other students type of thing. And then the class that I was looking forward to the most was illness in fiction. So it was a seminar class about exploring how illness is represented in fictional works. And I was really excited because I thought it was going to be about books like My Sister's Keeper or other books where there's a lot of moral ambiguity involved as part of the plot and the narrative, and that we were going to be able to discuss different aspects of how culture develops and how decisions are made, how morals are constructed, and also how they're upheld and broken down, and how we go from being in one extreme of a culture to another extreme of a culture. It was going to be very fascinating to me, especially because we were, like I said, in the midst of the pandemic. The problem is that when I went into this first class period with all of my idealistic dreams, I was very much immediately debunked in my expectations and anticipations, because when we were asked to present our definitions of illness, which we had to write up beforehand and then bring into class to read, there were like 9 or 11 of us. It was an odd number. I think it was 9. So of the 9 of us, 7 specifically included in their definition of illness racism, whiteness, and capitalism. Racism and whiteness I will address in other videos. I have talked about it a little bit in previous videos, but I'm not going to talk about those right now. I want to talk specifically about capitalism, because in the exact same breath that these kids were saying capitalism is an illness, they are participating in this class on their brand new MacBooks, wearing their brand new, Nikes and their brand name hoodies, and saying support local business. And I'm like, okay, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. So we're going to define capitalism, and then we're going to talk about it. What capitalism is versus what it is not. Capitalism is not consumerism. And I think that is what most people think of when they think about capitalism, because what typically comes to mind are these products that people consume but don't necessarily need, right? Name brand products like Supreme, which is one of the best companies at marketing anything, right? Like the hype is real with Supreme. Like they sell bricks with the Supreme name on it. They sell tire irons with the Supreme name on it. They sell pry bars with the Supreme name on it. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe they're actually getting into like the serial killer market. But I'll just leave that at that. That's consumerism, the idea of having something just to have it. Capitalism is the ability to go out and create capital from an idea, right? You look at the world and you say, this does not exist, or it does not exist in this way. If I create this, or if I do this a little bit differently, it will solve a problem that people have, even if they didn't know it was a problem that they had in the first place, right? So that's capitalism. You capitalize on something that needs to exist or can exist for a purpose in order to make money. When people start small businesses, they are capitalizing on an industry in order to create a life for themselves. Small coffee shops, small local restaurants, family-owned grocery stores, all of these things. It's all part of capitalism. And if you say down with capitalism, bring in socialism, what we're going to end up with is all of those mom and pop shops being closed down and all of the business going to these corporate conglomerates that already exist because they can afford to buy off the people that they have to buy off in order to continue existing as a socialist entity. The problem with that, even more so than the fact that it is now a socialist entity, is that it doesn't have any competition. So there's nothing that's going to pull you away from that corporate entity. That's all that there is. That's all that exists. It's Coke without Pepsi, right? It's just the one thing. Now, in an ideal world, you could say that these corporate socialist entities would continue to produce high quality materials, but we already know that's not true because these corporate entities that have made it to the top, where they don't have to produce good quality stuff in order to continue being the overarching corporate entity, have been producing garbage. And it's, whether it's food, whether it is clothing, whether it is electronics or media, entertainment, it's all trash. It's all designed to break, because what they're doing is they are hooking you on their product. One of the things that I hate the most about Apple, and I do have an Apple phone, I will confess this. One of the things I hate most about Apple is that they compound their updates. So every time you update your phone, you're not overwriting the previous update, you're adding to that update, and it eats away at the data on your phone. So I had a 250 something gigabyte phone for my last phone. And I thought, this is great. I'll never have enough anything to fill up 250 gigabytes. Or I think it was even more than that. I think it was 500. Whatever it was a ridiculous amount of space, right? And I didn't. I never had enough pictures. I never had enough videos. I never had enough music. You know what I had enough of? Updates. I had enough updates that it ate up all of the memory on my phone, so I had to get a new phone. And I got the newest iPhone at the time, and it came with a terabyte or two. I think it's just one. It came with a terabyte of space. And if I ever have to get a new phone, I will be extremely irate with Apple, because that's a ridiculous amount of space to fill up with updates. And I mean, they update every other week, it feels like. Anyway, that is social capitalism, right? That is a business becoming so large that it has the ability to affect society without real consequences. There are no real competitors for Apple in the way that there are no real competitors for Android. You choose between the two, but they're different enough that they're not really direct competitors. You either like Apple or you like Android, and you hate Apple and you hate Android. There's really no crossover there. You're either one or you're the other. This is becoming more and more common in our society, in our consumerism society, where people want cheaper products even if they are lower quality. So we've been exporting all of our manufacturing to other countries, to places like China, to places like India. Less so now. India is moving into its first world self, and so it's exporting a lot of its own manufacturing to other places. But definitely China, Taiwan, Indonesia, the Philippines, a lot of these East Asian countries are being exploited for their cheap labor, because the world as a labor producing entity is shrinking. The more and more countries catch up to where America is, the more and more we are going to be pushing our exportation of labor to places where they're still struggling to develop because they're being kept that way, right? If you're not Han Chinese, you're basically a slave in a sweat house making iPhones. That's the problem that we're facing right now. Not capitalism, consumerism. If we're going to go out and buy cheap things from China, then these companies are going to capitalize on that. They're going to capitalize on our consumer behavior and sell us cheap things from China. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a major advocate for Made in America stuff. There are some things where it's just genuinely not feasible to make it in America. And there are other places across the world that need the labor that we require so that they can live. that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are bad ways of doing it, but it's not in and of itself a bad thing. What we have to reconcile ourselves to is the fact that we are creating a world class system where America is the upper class, regardless of how much money you make, because we expect our consuming addiction to be fulfilled. It's absolutely insane how much money people who are below the poverty level spend on consumer items. Things like the newest TV, the newest cell phone, the newest shoes, the newest everything. We're told if it's not new, it's old. We have to get rid of everything that is old. It's always the new, right? And it's just perpetually this way. That's not capitalism. It's consumerism. And we're feeding it. We are helping this socialist capitalism grow because we're not stopping to consider what it is that we are consuming on the day to day. So if you think capitalism is a cancer in our society, an illness that needs to be cut out and destroyed, you're wrong. The problem is not the companies that are capitalizing on our consumerism. The problem is we're bad consumers. And until we stop being bad consumers, we're just going to keep getting bad socialist capitalism. And that means no matter how self-righteously you say support small business, those small businesses are going to go away. And all we're going to be left with is the crappy socialist capitalist conglomerates that we as consumers created.